So, welcome everyone. I am with author Shellie Enteen. She has written The Last Priestess, which is going to be our subject of topic today. She's also the author of the trilogy revealing the Druid Legacy. So, we'll touch base a little bit on those as well. I've written a lot of really cool notes just in case I forget to ask during this interview today, Shellie. And this is Soulful Conversations with Modern Day Healers. And of course, I'm your host, Lizz Naughton. Shellie, welcome. I have to tell you, you are one of my most favorite people on the planet. And I'm so grateful that you are doing part two of our interview series. But I wanted to talk about, let me show the book. I just finished reading The Last Priestess. It's the first of her three books where she writes about Welsh, kind of like the Welsh heritage or the Welsh folklore around the Arthurian tale. And I I can't help but to think I've got like so many different questions like bubbling around in my head. I am of the product of Mists of Avalon. So I've got that kind of Arthurian tale in my head. But the advantage was I read that book 40 years ago. So it doesn't seem to be as crisp and clear as it could have been. But reading The Last Priestess, it really resonated with me. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are, Avalon versus Glastonbury, just the differences between the
Yes,
English Arthur mythology and the Welsh Arthurian mythology. If you could just
happy
touch on that.
happy to tell you, because that was a journey of discovery for me also, because of course it was, I think, about 82 or something when I read The Mists of Avalon, because that was, she was publishing it then. And stayed up all night like everybody else, and having loved the Arthur stories, so the love triangle of, you know, Arthur and Lancelot and Guinevere and all this. Um, I've read so many different versions, Morgan Llewellyn's versions. She's a wonderful, prolific author on that topic. Um, so when the woman on the train who gave me the assignment, the stranger on the train, which is in my author's note at the back of book one, you get the whole story. And she said to me that Arthur wasn't in England, he was in Wales. And she was the president of an Arthurian society in Cambridge. So I thought, she's really into this. And if she's telling me that, and it was me coming back from Glastonbury on a train to London where I, only had one seat left and it was across from her. And she engaged me. Um, where have you been? And, you know, everybody looks for Arthur. Let me just say, I mean, there are books like this thick of
Mhm.
all the searches over hundreds of years to make sure that that country or that place could say for sure, this is where he was, and this is where he died, anyway. So I wasn't, like right away with the theme, like she said it to me, but I was like, what? And then she hooked me into, I was in England for a class and I was coming back again. She didn't know me, she didn't know anything about me. This conversation went right to this because she asked me where I'd been. And I said, you know, they said Cadbury Castle. And I said, I didn't feel him. And I don't know why I even said that, but it was true. When I was like going near the place with these other friends, I was like, he wasn't anywhere near this place, much less this. And I just didn't know why I knew it. So she said it, and she said, no, he was in Caerleon. Caerleon was his place of Camelot. She made it kind of like a, you know. And then she said, you must go to a pub in Caerleon where Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote The Lady of Shalott. And I actually happen to have it in the car right now. There's a CD that Lorena McKennitt, beautiful music, very interesting music. She wrote her own song to this poem. And I was listening to it a lot. It happened to be her latest album. And that was my favorite song. And so when she said that, I went, oh, and that's interesting, So I was going back to England. I had the friend in Glastonbury. I got in touch with her. I said, do you think we could go there? And it just happened to be my birthday when I could go. And she said, absolutely, it's not far. So from Glastonbury, we hopped over the bridge. And that's what got me to write the book. That's why she hooked me with this, because Caerleon was delightful. Now, this is like 1999. Things changed, so I can't tell you I know what it's like right now. But I was in the hologram. If your listeners don't understand, hologram is the idea that everything is still happening in the space. All time is, we have our own way of looking at time because of our limitations, but in another way, everything is still happening in a location, which has a lot of application, which is another topic of discussion, right? But I was at the ruins of the Roman fortress, which I did not know anything about any of this. Welsh, I didn't even know. Wales, everybody was like, what's that? Where's that? But there was this major, one of the largest fortresses that the Romans had when they occupied was Caerleon. And I was walking through it, and I'm sure this is what happened to me, because book 2 that you just picked up was downloaded when I was standing across from what I was told was the Priestess Isle.
Wow.
When you're in the space of it, it's easier to bring in what's happened there. So that's when I didn't start writing right after I met her in May. I was in January at home after being in the hologram that I started bringing her through. And this was a big surprise to me. Everything I wrote was a big surprise to me. And it caused me to research. Like, what? Well, one of the interesting things is in book 1, she makes a journey to a circle of 9 on the tour and to Chalice Well. What people don't understand, and it's because we just haven't been involved in this, it hasn't been our cultural focus at all when we were growing up. There wasn't just one circle of 9 priestesses. They were the regional area. Wherever there was a healing well, you would find the circle, because you weren't like driving cars all over, people had to reach you, you had to reach people.
Right.
So it isn't like there was nothing there. Like that's just a figment of your imagination. It isn't like that. People don't have to feel that way about it. But I also learned that the word Avalon, this like blew me away, was derived from the Welsh word Afalon. Afalon, you really have a sh because there's 2 L's, which is in Welsh mythology. And he is a god of the other world who kept the apple orchards there. Afel is a Welsh word. And Merlin is an anglicized Merthin, Welsh. So, it began to dawn on me, like slowly, that this woman was probably right. And I would just go on the journey and find out. Then I looked up the history of the story of Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot, because Guinevere and Lancelot are sort of French sounding names. Okay. And there was, of course, the battle, William the Conqueror came in, and there was a lot of French being spoken after 1066 in England. But Arthur, as I was told, and I had no idea the time frame. She said I was born in 479, what we called AD. Um, okay, I'm literally just writing. That story was first created by Cistercian monks in the 12th century, I think, 1100s, Eleanor of Aquitaine. It was a new fad in cultural society, courtly romance, knights and, armor and all of that. They weren't like that in 479 AD. And so the whole idea of this love triangle was, it was not meant to be news, eyewitness news. So many of the stories were just created because there was a folk tale. I'm going to do my version of it now and, make it pleasing and entertaining to this court.
So some of
And
the other things too that really kind of struck me about the book was just how familiar it felt to me. So by the time I was finished, it was like I had already experienced, I didn't have to make up like the topography or anything like that. It's like I already understood where she was, where they all were, what it looked like, and it felt so comfortable to me. And at first, I just kind of sat there and thought, that is just so interesting that it feels like I know the story, and yet it was clear that I didn't until I actually started to read it. So, have you had other people that have read your book that also comments about, gosh, this feels so familiar to me?
yes, and actually, I think there are some of the reviews on Amazon that people will say that they were like completely drawn into the time. And I think that's because, for one thing, you may have a memory of that culture, and it doesn't even have to be Celtic. It doesn't have to be your Celtic background. It can be any of the places that were agricultural land oriented societies. Um, it, you know, there was such a connection to the environment then, and we all descend from one of these. If you're here, unless you landed like Mork in the yard, Mork and Mindy, right, in an egg, you go back to an indigenous
Yes.
people. So there's something that's actually comforting, I feel, about that, because there was such interdependence on nature, but on each other also. The idea of that community that keeps coming together in like a supportive way, which we are kind of lacking in a sense now, but which was so vital for survival,
Right.
at that time. And also, that's one of the reasons that people would have been women at, that first ability to produce another set of hands. Because, Anwen, and he does tell her this, she has a very sheltered life. And he tells her why. And when you read the rest of the books, you'll go, oh, that's why he said this to her. That's what kept happening to me. When I would reread book one, I'd go, oh, that happens later. And that's why he said.
Right.
I mean, really, it was like, when I say it was a journey for me, it was definitely a journey for me. But this idea of going through a hard winter, having a bad harvest, you know, diseases that they couldn't handle with their herbs, and their wise woman wasn't able to, you know, they lost children.
Yeah.
They lost mothers in childbirth. You know, they didn't have what we have. So, you know, it was important to keep replenishing the society. So it's like when you go there, you have to really know that you're not dealing with now. You're dealing with like what, 479 to about 520 AD. That's where you are. And you're in what was called the Celtic Dark Age, because the Druids left no written information about their practices, their belief systems, nothing. And it was, I think, I believe it's said in the book several times, they knew it would be distorted if they did that. It wasn't that
Right.
they were very learned, especially the Druid priests. I mean, you know,
So do you think that might be a part of the reason why you downloaded the information when you visited? Where it's now a time for that information. It's like we're finally at an age where, an era where we're a little bit more responsible with energy work and working with the environment.
I'm going to read you. Is that okay? I'm
Of
just going to
course.
read you from Anwen Speaks to You. And I think this is one of the things, is that this is a direct speaking to you. And that's one of the reasons that people get drawn in. And she was doing that to me.
Mhm.
But I mean, she literally, you know, comes in saying that she's been called a lot of different names that weren't hers and been depicted in, you know, the priestesses. I mean, that's another thing about the Mists of Avalon that women don't seem to notice. I didn't at the time. Um, all the female characters in Mists of Avalon are negatively portrayed. His, you know, his mother is, you know,
Oh,
sleeping with not her husband. Guinevere is, you know, betraying him. And the priestesses, even Morgan, is, you know, seducing him, and he's her brother. You know, I mean, they're not positive. And we have such a long history of being under the negative lens that we didn't even notice that.
I didn't pick that up either. No.
Nobody did. I mean it. And I really feel like, you know, the woman on the train said, she did a lot to humanize the character of Morgan Le Fay. She was a fairy, Le Fay. So she's now a woman with a woman's feelings and a woman's life, you know. And that was the gift. And that's why women took it so well. Like, look, this is a famous story. It's being told by a woman. We loved that book. I'm telling you.
Wow.
It was, and it is a powerful book. It just could do what it could do at the cultural time. At the time that was written, the Catholic Church was still strong enough to tell their, you know,
The
participants,
parishioners. Yeah.
their parishes, what books not to read and what movies not to see. So at the end of The Mists of Avalon, Morgan Le Fay becomes a nun. She surrenders to the Roman Church. And you know that always went funny with me. That
Yes.
ending went, you know, like what happens? You know, like I was heading this way and now going that way. And when I was having an agent who wanted me to make one romance novel out of this trilogy,
Right.
so I had to let go of her. She said that it was probably the publishers that made her change that ending because the book would be accepted. Like, okay, all this wonderful, nice fantasy, but she becomes a Catholic. So,
Wow, that in itself is powerful. if you just really think about the, you know, the times.
Women's rights, women's everything, right?
Yeah.
84 was, not long. We weren't able to get credit cards till the 70s or something, right?
Wow.
Without a husband's signature or something like that. So she starts telling you the truth about it and who she was. And then she says they were like happy with all these stories proliferating because Arthur was really a legend in his own time. The folk tales kept going.
Right.
Um, so they knew that it would keep people interested. And because they left nothing, they would be more interested. Like, what did they do? Who were these people?
Right.
You know? So
Yeah.
she says, the wise ones also knew that long after our presence faded, interest in the legendary warrior Arthur and the wizard Merlin would remain. They appeared in folk tales and memories passed down through the generations to come. On the way, more and more of the original story was lost. But even the fabricated tales written later by Christian monks would serve to keep us alive in the minds of generations to come. Patiently, I have waited while the centuries unfolded exactly as my lady sisters and the Druid priests had foretold. My own story has the power to change beliefs and empower potentials. But the veil over truth had become so thick that had I tried to speak, my words would have ricocheted off dense walls of fear or been buried in the quicksand of despair. And so this tale has been kept carefully cloaked in silence, along with other truths about our time, sacred sites and ways. We knew the time of silence and hiding would end, and we watched from the other world, looking for signs that would indicate a long Earth cycle had finished and a new cycle had begun. Finally, this was seen in the birth of those unwilling to be bruised by centuries of lies. With eager hearts and minds, gets me emotional. And I've read it how many times? They seek the hidden truth. And for this purpose, I have come now to part the veil between our worlds. I will reveal my name and tell my story. You will know it is true, for it is your own, a memory reawakening within the crystals of your bones.
That is so beautiful. And that's actually my experience with reading the story. It's like, well, of course I know the story, but I don't know why, you know? So, and you too are getting that from your readers. I understand there's
Yes.
also men that have contacted you. Do you think those are druids from times past that are waking up and remembering?
Well, I can tell you, yes, because one of them, the one that I got the email from last night, is an astrologer friend of mine from Asheville, and he is involved in some of the Druid ways also. He was open enough to read it, because he knows me. I didn't know he was reading it though. And he was very positive about it. Um, I think that it's very validating for me when men are able to. One of my beta readers, her husband was reading it. I didn't know. And her husband has tracked his lineage lines, his like literal ancestry.
Yeah.
And he knows that he was related to the Silurian tribe of Wales. Now, that is where the southeast coastline of Wales, and that's where Caerleon is.
Wow.
And that, as I didn't know, but research later told me, was that tribe there, and they were the greatest of all the warriors. So they had what were called the Uther Pendragons. And that was not a surname, Pendragon. It was the most fierce and terrible Uther. And that is, by the way, Welsh language too, Uther Pendragon.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it blew me away, right? This book was like, you got to change everything you thought, you got to rearrange the molecules. And the pen is of the, that's like a little, and then dragon, fiercest of the warrior
So
power.
it's almost like saying like warriors of the dragon. And
The
just,
most powerful, most terrifying.
well, if you think about dragons, they are powerful and terrifying.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the word Uther means
That is so amazing. And I really resonate with what you're saying too. It's just, but in more of a gentle manner, if that makes sense.
that. In what? In more of a gentle manner.
Not so much the warrior piece, but just the whole holistic familiarity with working
Oh,
with nature. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yes, you're not a warrior now, but I think some of the men reading it are getting that.
We're waking up to what they were.
Yes. And he tracked himself to this tribe. He tracked himself to a lot of places, but um, so he was feeling it. I mean, his review is also there on book 3. He reviews the trilogy. And it was validating. I mean, they're going to Wales, next
Wow.
month. Yeah, they're going to take a trip around. He's also very related to the Scotland area, so they're going to do both of those to
Wonderful.
an extent. But yeah, I mean, it really thrills me because there is a romance story here. You have two powerful romances as you go along, and other people have powerful romances. Her lady sisters and her friends. It's not just her. There are lots of characters that are going to come in
Right.
um, and have meaning. And so, I mean, I think that I guess that's why I was thinking it was just a woman's book. I would have had it in women's historical fiction. But men have always loved the Arthur tale, you know.
Yes.
And this man said, this is the most real and the most compassionately understood depiction of this tale of Arthur and Merlin that I've ever read.
Ah, that's wonderful. Yes, just my insight with Merlin in your book makes him real and relatable. And
He,
also understanding the responsibility of healers and what's required. So it's like I also understood. So they're on a lot of different levels. It's like I understood the excitement of learning something in the healing vein for the first time. And it's like, well, what do you do with that? And how to start to assimilate that. And also being on the other end and understanding that you can't push the water too quickly because there's an organic way of growing into each step as you accrue experience. So
those
yeah,
are
so I understood
those
like
are the
both
words.
sides.
Those are the words we don't hear enough.
Yes.
That it takes some experience with it before you're a master of it.
Well, and there's a stage of being awkward and just being okay with it's okay. My arms are gonna flap for a long time. I hope it's not too obvious, but that's a part of it too, is, you have to be willing to grow into
Yeah,
whatever it is that you're trying for the first time,
right,
and
right.
trying to assimilate
And,
that.
and we do know that she's returning from other lifetimes, which, by the way, until the 500s, late 500s, I think, it was accepted that there was reincarnation, even in the early Christians and different religions before that. So that was like with the edicts of the councils, they decided that that wasn't a good idea to leave that idea in. So they kept altering and changing, you know.
But I
But
think today's society is really proving it's like with especially the younger people that are coming in right now, they don't know why they need to pursue like some kind of healing modality, or at least learn how to, do this or that holistically. And I just personally believe because that's where they left off last time, and they know it. So they're coming back to it, but they don't have a frame of reference to kind of link like where they came from to where they are today. And why do I know that? And it's like, and why do I connect to the collective consciousness? How can that be real? So I think we really are living in a really exciting time where information we're getting hooked up with isn't through our cell phones, it's through the cosmos, really.
that's where the real news is. But I think, again, it's that evolving. When she says the time that the people would be born who were going to seek the truth. I mean, it started, I think, the neo-Druid movement, let's say, just for that truth. I mean, I was busy with the other areas, like learning about um, Asian philosophies and
Yeah.
practices and things like that, then Native Americans and stuff. So I was never involved in Celtic learning, but people started, I think it's in the 1800s that the bigger wave of let's see what they were doing started coming in, and was able to because they weren't going to be, doing something against the law, or, to go through a tribunal or something for
Right.
studying these things. So you have, again, this wave of seekers that start. When I started studying astrology, it was 1974 or 5, maybe. And I was not telling anyone I was doing that. People thought it was weird.
Yeah.
I was, evil. And particularly the husbands of friends, they didn't like that at all. They were like, oh, she's getting a little too far out there for us.
I was in Southern California when I started my research, so I still got that kind of flack, but it was still on some level more acceptable just because there are
California.
more like-minded people
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
So I think like for me, the pinnacle of my weirdness, and I'll say that like in quotes, was when we sat on the rocks in La Jolla, praying and meditating during the harmonic convergence, so
That,
that the world would, I don't even know why, I don't remember why I was there. I just remembered that I just like prayed my fanny off. So when I say it now, people are like, really? And it's like, yes. But I
it,
always say, you're welcome.
right. Well, it was that moment that it shifted.
Yes.
After that, if I said I was an astrologer, the first thing that came back to me was, can I get a reading? It was definitely a cosmic event, without a doubt.
Yes, and the teachers that I worked with, these amazing metaphysicians in San Diego, these ladies would say, wait until 2000. It's going to shift tremendously. So it was like when I was doing that, it was like in the mid to late 80s that I was studying heavily with these incredible teachers, which are now considered to be pioneers of
Yeah,
holistic medicine.
right.
Not the labels that I grew up with, most certainly, but they were right. It's like when 2000 hit, then all of a sudden the stuff that I was looking at was alternative medicine, complementary medicine, energy medicine. So it's like everybody just kind of like shifted to the side, and I don't know I don't know why that happened. It just did.
It was the spiral of the cycle. I mean, we're always cycling and it's always different. But I think what you said, the pioneers, I mean, that was one of the things we signed up for.
Yeah.
We came in because we were going to go into those places that they called occult.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was worried about it at first. I thought I might be doing something bad or I'd get in. So I had a past life regression, which was like news to everybody. Nobody was doing that either.
Right. Right.
And I saw a past life and, I got to see something and then I got to see myself on the other side. And it cleared, it cleared the fact that it's not the art, it's who you are bringing to the art. Like anything can be used for bad purpose if
Right.
the person isn't aware and is not evolved to that point that they want to do something in a more positive way.
Right.
I was reassured during that particular past life that it was okay. You're all right. You weren't all right then, but you're all right now. So
And
you
I
could go ahead.
and I think there's an evolution to that also just in living life. It's like as those pieces of our personality we find egregious to ourselves, that I think that's
Yes,
just an indication I'm ready to let that go. I don't have to
yeah,
think that way. I
that's
don't
right.
have to behave, I don't have to, just let it go. So I really think too, that's a part of the role that healers are playing today, is to help other people, like just let go of the baggage that they've picked up along the way, either in this time or last time or several times ago, just so that they can be more present in whatever is
Right.
happening today.
I agree. And I also agree that because, we're the grandmothers now, and there were
Yes.
children after us, and the children after us, and even some children after that now,
Yes.
that was all opening the doorway for those to come in, like you just described, you know,
Yes.
because the society shifted, there was enough mind, the mind goes out. And
Right.
that's one of the most important things that we need to know. And particularly today, the mind has power. And when we focus in the fears and the negativities,
Mhm.
then that's what we're feeding. So if we focus in what would I rather see, no matter
Like
what,
Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you seek in the world.
or think, I mean, vision and
Yes.
think about not the terrible thing you read in the news and how it frightens you, but okay, now this is going to happen in the future. This is going to be different. I mean, there is the fatalism of that age when Anwen's in it. I mean, they know they're going to have to disappear, so to speak. They won't be gone, but they'll be
Right.
because of the force that's going to come in, how intense it's going to be. But they are willing to do what they have their plan, and they're willing to carry that plan out because they were looking at life as this is your only life, and you have no influence on future events once you leave. They felt that they did.
And that's so interesting because I am of the exact opposite, because I know I'll be back when this is over, or if I won't be back in this realm, then I'm
Mm,
just simply going into the next realm.
right.
So it really does help dissipate some of the fear that I've had in the past. And I think what it also helps with is just focus on what I can change and what I can give to my environment. Because when I really reach out into global issues, I feel powerless and sad.
Yes, but again, that is where once you feel the powerless and sad thing, you can turn it around and just send your intention. Like we just had this eclipse, this amazing eclipse happened,
Right.
right?
Right.
And in the ancient days, they would have seen that. They would have seen nature respond to it, and they would have known that it was, momentous. I mean, we find out at the beginning of the book that because the comet came across the sky in that area when Arthur was born, they feared for him because people would know that the one they were waiting for had been born.
Right.
And so they sent him. That's why Cornwall claims him, because they did send him to foster. His mother
Uh,
was raised on Cornwall, and her not real brother, but her brother brought him up. I mean, we know this right in the beginning of the book. That's why I don't feel like I'm giving anything away. So these momentous occasions were very well understood then. So that's why, they do have a presence of him there. They have a
right.
presence of him in a lot of places because he did some traveling around. But I mean, I think that this particular one and the amount of Aries energy, which is, the first sign, the I am, the new beginnings,
Mhm.
was so powerful. Very compressed area of the sky with planetary energies in it, that we had the opportunity to seed our vision for a new beginning. I mean, this is like a couple of thousand years of the patriarchal viewpoint. And, it's like it has affected everything, even astrology, in terms of and we don't know what the Druid astrologies were. We know that they were looking at the sky for sure,
Right.
but,
Right.
we don't have any information about that. But when they named the planets, they're male gods, except for one, Venus.
Right.
And, like now, and it's taken till now, believe it or not, like really recent time, with some dwarf planet being made out of one of the asteroid series, with, some other planets beyond Pluto having goddess names for astrologers, female astrologers, I will hasten to add, to say, wait a minute, where are the females here?
Yeah, the balance.
Yes. So it's been a long time, that the Greek idea, it started in Greece. Well, the Hebrews had it also, but, it's been a long time.
So I'm almost wondering with everything that's going on right now with us, if we're moving back into more of a priestess energy. And that's why there is such like a resistance to women. So it's like, so let's push them back as far as we can get them so
Yes.
they'll stop this nonsense of being autonomous.
Well, see, one of the things about the Celtic culture that I haven't learned from Anwen, and then I did research a lot of stuff, believe me, especially with book 3. I put a whole addendum in the back so people could read what I actually researched,
Right.
and found to be true. That society, women were equal, they owned property. And one of the major issues was the death penalty for a man who forced a woman to have sex. I mean, and that was other men also, agreeing to that. It's, really, really, because the woman was not, even in the indigenous tribes here. I was speaking to one of my teachers recently. He said a lot of the tribes, the women were the ones that made the decisions.
Mhm.
So that whole issue was brought in and imposed over that culture. So even when you talk about the romances and stuff like that, there would not be a person who wasn't there from their own free will,
Right.
female,
Right.
except for one that we see in the book, and we find
Exactly.
out what the law does. Because it was that, and the priestess is coming back. It's if you were living near Asheville in the mountains here, the hills are alive with priestesses. I
Wow.
mean, it is so big as a
Wow.
movement here. And a lot of them came in through it from being interested in herbalism.
Right.
We have big conferences here and everything. So they're very earthy priestesses in the mountains, and people are certifying priestesses, having these circles and stuff. Yeah.
So that is so interesting. Is that the next step for you, is to utilize or teach the information that you've downloaded really from your books?
Right. Yeah, because I knew certain things, but this goes much further. Answers a lot of questions I had about certain things I was told when I was a metaphysician.
Yeah.
Um, it's it, it's very challenging, book two, Priestess of the Realms. It's pretty challenging. Um, and it can be reread and reread. One of the reviewers had said, this is a book you want on your shelf to take out again and look at. Um, and so I am kind of waiting for enough people to have read, at least through book three to begin to offer well, actually, a couple of the people that I know in this area
Mhm.
want to be present and then zoomed in the rest of whoever wants to be there for us to go through those training pieces. There are some training pieces in book one, but it gets really accelerated when she gets over onto the Priestess Isle.
Wow.
And so it's great discussion. It's great experiential for people
Mhm.
to have. So I would love to do that. I just have to be patient, which I'm learning more about patience.
That's always such a hard lesson.
Well, when I realized, I started writing in 2000, and had a very big life. I was very into, doing healing body work, aromatherapy, teaching, all of that, everything. So it wasn't like I had a full-time writing position.
Right, right.
So, but I was so concerned about how long it was taking. And even when I had somebody introduce me to my guides on it in 2013, which is why I went to Wales, um, because that's the first thing they said, you must go to Wales. I was like, "Ugh," you know, but I was apologizing to them. Like, I it's 13 years, and I'm sorry. And, oh, no, 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 we just wanted to hook you. No, you couldn't have done it till now is when you can start to bring this out. And I said, why? And they said, well, the fabric of the church is ripped and it will never be as strong again. So I didn't really understand that until a couple of days later, the Pope resigned. And the Pope, because he was caught in a big scandal that they called in Italy, they called it Vatican Gate.
Wow.
And the Pope had a warrant for his arrest in Italy, so he couldn't leave the Vatican. So, and people knew the pedophilia stuff had come out. So the followers were kind of getting a little like concerned. It wasn't quite as like, they were all perfect. They couldn't quite look at
Yeah.
him that way, which is good. Nobody's all perfect in any
Right,
place.
right.
So
Because we're human. I mean, that's
it's good
our
to look at it.
vulnerabilities are some of our greatest strengths, really,
Right.
if
It's
you
not
think
just
about it.
them. Don't get me wrong. But that was the thing that was stopping this telling. from coming forward. And then this eclipse, when I realized the power of the moment for the new way, and that was what we were seeding that in. I mean, we had 83% coverage here.
Wow.
But I wasn't out there looking at the sky. I was like doing a ceremony, like you did for the harmonic convergence, which I was in one also,
Yes.
because it was a big moment that we could move the energy forward into a new way. And so we were visioning, what we thought we should do. And it was then that I realized, no, they had the timing. You didn't have to have the timing. It wasn't your job. The timing wasn't your job. The scribing was your job.
Right.
Because 2013 is when I finished, 2023 was when I finished publishing 2 books, and 1 book came out in January, the last book in
Mhm.
2024. But it was right before this eclipse. It was the time for the door to open fully is now.
That's so interesting. I did a meditation. I like guided meditations. And just before the eclipse, briefly, the last probably 60 seconds of this meditation, I saw a woman in amber light. She was old and she only showed me like half of her profile as she's looking over. And I keep trying to tap, it's like, who are you? Trying to tap into, she's a teacher. I know that. I don't know who she is, but just the thought that she revealed herself to me just before I came out of the meditation was interesting. So
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see where my development goes, really, like from now till the next phase of whatever that development is.
Right. And I know that that ancestral energy level has been accelerating year after year after year. Usually it comes up around the time of this, what the Irish word is Samhain. We don't know the names that the Welsh had for the festivals, but we know the modern name, and it's always talking about what the time is, like the time of
Mhm.
the snow, or the time of the last harvest, or the time of. But when it gets to that Samhain point, that's when people start honoring the ancestors. And that started to gain momentum over the years since I've been here. Up here, I've seen it on Facebook, everything, but heal your ancestral, connect to your ancestors. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really, but now I think there's more resource. There's more good resource for it, and in your own willingness to bring in. I mean, there are people on your ancestral line who I just had a session yesterday, actually, and it was on my Welsh line, that there was a problem with being a woman and expressing and feeling powerful and, things like that. And so that was like part of a branch that went onto my tree. It might not have gone on to the others.
Mhm.
It was mine to heal.
Right.
And when you heal, it tracks all the way through, all the way back. And everyone who is ever involved in it. So it's a good thing to be able to do that now, because
I agree. They also have in more of um an accepted methodology. It's called family constellation therapy.
that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they do. They
Oh,
uncover the secrets
mm,
of our ancestry. So if I'm aware of them and I heal them, then I heal all of my lineage, all of my ancestors.
and
And the
that's
big
like freeing space.
It's freeing space, but the even more important and like the bigger picture to that is I no longer pass those on to my descendants.
Right.
because they're free also.
Yes.
So it's like, what a beautiful thing. So there's a lot of therapists now that are doing the family constellations.
Hmm. I know, I see that a lot. I first heard of it with an astrologer friend of mine. Um, well, a long time ago, he's a psychologist also.
Wonderful.
He
Yeah.
got into that, you know, and that's part of
Yeah.
his work. Yeah, he's in Wales. Actually, he lives in Caerleon now. He and his
Wow.
wife, and child. Well, he was Welsh, but I didn't really know that. And that's the other thing about Wales. We mentioned this before. Why does nobody know about Wales? I mean, in 2013, when I was going over, I said I was going to land in Heathrow. Somebody said, "Oh, are you going to England?" I said, "No." "You going to Scotland?" I said, "No." "You going to Ireland?" I said, "No." "Well, where are you going?" I said, "Wales." And they said, "Wales?" You know, really, when you read the books, you understand that there was a definite purpose, design that was created, the Vale over Wales. But the Welsh history is profound. Well, if you look at it, because they were not subdued by England until like one of Richard that built all the castles. They were fierce fighters and they wanted their independence. So that was still in them, and it's in them now because they're claiming their words again. Like Snowdon, Mount Snowdon, they're bringing back, Erie and Inniswitfrin, and they're bringing back the names. I didn't use the names. I wanted to. I really wanted to use the names of the areas that would have been the names spoken in the
Mhm.
language of Wales. But it's difficult for people to look at some of the ways the letters come together, like YDDL, or, they
Yeah.
don't know how it sounds because it doesn't sound like you think it does in English. So I said, I don't want to stop people from moving in the book by, even with Merlin, I wanted to call him Myrddin, which is Myrddin. People would go, they wouldn't be able to get it in their mouth, so they wouldn't.
Right.
So I used, and I say this in the book, I really, and I did get Welsh names also, and I worked with the Welsh historian and mythology teacher to know how far back these names could be instead of the ones that are more common now, but they're pronounceable in your mind. Like when you see the names in the book,
Yes. Yes.
and I felt that was important.
And
Um,
that helped me, like, with Gwendolyn and some of the other characters that you write about. It was so I appreciated that, because when I looked over it, and then as I began to read the book, it was like that was a part of my psyche. So I was able to read it seamlessly. So I really appreciated that.
it just felt like don't make it hard. Because I've read a lot of books that had Welsh words in it, and I go, I have to keep looking back to find out how they say it.
Right, right.
Um, but also Wales was because I think they were so resistant and capable of resisting. They were put down, the most put down by the English. I mean, when I lived in England a long time ago, there was one medical student, she was Welsh,
Mhm.
and that's the only Welsh person I met the whole time I was living in London. And I heard negative thoughts about the Welsh, so much so, and in subsequent visits to England and stuff, that I'm going to Wales. I have to be really protected. These people aren't nice. These people are hard to understand. These people are, this kind of thing.
Right.
The nicest people. I mean, incredibly lovely, hospitable, just warm,
Yeah.
so it was a thing that was put on them, and people didn't tell that they were Welsh. I mean, when I found out that about my Welsh great grandmother in 2011, my father knew, but they never mentioned it,
Wow.
because it was just. So I just recently, there's a Facebook group called Welsh History and such. And the number of Welsh who came to the United States in the 1800s was so big, and there was Welsh heritage in many of our presidents and founding fathers. So much Welsh energy was here during the time that Lincoln was doing his campaign for the presidency that he had a pamphlet written in the Welsh language.
Wow.
See?
Wow.
Who knows this? Two of my friends who I've known for 18 years here in this area just revealed to me yesterday. I saw my friends, he's a wonderful deep tissue massage guy, and a great
Wow.
friend of mine. And I said, "Your middle name is Morgan." I saw his certificate, but he put it in a different place. And he goes, "Yeah, it's Welsh." I said, "Darn." He said, my mother's father's name. I went, "Right." And then my friend who was doing the session with me, who is, I think she was born in, I think in Tennessee. She's Southern. And she said, "Oh yeah, my mother's was Welsh." Like, okay. People do, it was like
Yeah.
this thing that you didn't mention, but
And
that's changing.
yes, and my mother's people are from Wales, and they were coal miners. So lots of West Virginia have Welsh, along with the superstitions. So I would always tease my mom every time she responded with one of those superstitions that she grew up with. We would tease her, but now I kind of hold those like close to my heart, just because I have a little bit more of an understanding of the Welsh community, not as much as I would like to. So that is now on my bucket list
Hmm.
to go, because I have a feeling that in my teenage years, I was involved with acting and also learning Shakespeare and doing things along those lines. And so I was exposed to all of that beautiful language. I thought for sure that someday I would go to Ireland and see like a portrait of myself hanging in somebody's bar of a past life, but now I'm almost wondering if it's in Wales instead of Ireland.
Well,
Who
it's
knows?
interesting. I mean, I have, and I have more of Irish DNA than I have the Welsh is part of the UK group,
Mhm.
but it's the one, it depends on what you are bringing in. Also, I
Yeah.
mean, I've been attracted to, the Welsh dance, the Welsh music, and all the time I've been over there to the UK quite a lot, and having lived there for a little bit in
Mhm.
England, I just never felt drawn to go there, which is also possible because my ancestors came during the potato famine era.
Oh,
So I may have brought in that wasn't good there, not conscious or not said,
yes.
just nah, don't go there. I mean, I look at documentaries and I go, wow, this is so beautiful,
Right, right.
And the thing about the miners, it's interesting because that's what most people think of.
Yes.
And when I was there, what I was seeing were green, beautiful, amazing sheep everywhere. Not the green sheep, but the sheep were on the
Yeah.
slopes everywhere. I mean, I wish nobody would find it and ruin it, because it is just so beautiful. But the guy who was driving our little tour group van, I have a feeling he was an ancestor. I would have to have a lot of money to research because it goes through the maternal line, the maternal line, and the
Mhm.
name wasn't on the census, the last name of that relative. But you know, he just reminded me of physiologically of
Mhm.
certain members of the family, and his name was Alan. And I said to him, what's your last name? And I didn't know why I said it even. And he said Jones. And I said, I knew you were going to say that. And so I wonder if that was not the surname, because that's a very common name in Wales. But it was just this feeling of being home. When I was in Wales, I felt so strong for it. And it's not my largest amount, but I showed him the
Wow.
picture of this ancestor, which I had never seen until 2011.
Right.
My my great grandmother was no longer around. Um, and he said, yeah, she looks Welsh. Like he took a look at her. She's like very sturdy and a woman like this. And so I said to him, I wonder when they came over, if it was really, they were minors or something. And he said, oh, a lot of people went to America that weren't minors too. I mean, they went from all over.
Mhm.
So I went, oh, and he had some farm that he raised cattle and stuff. So, I had the feeling when I was in that area, I was in the ancestral area. But I fell in love with Snowdonia. I was like, please put a house here. Let me be here. The mountains are just magnificent energetically.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think that Wales is coming back into its own in every single way it can be coming back. And apparently, I was on the ancestral line, not even knowing it, when this woman tapped me on the train, said,
That's so interesting. So I wonder if the mist is clearing for the people who are supposed to find the island. Do you know what I mean?
well, I'll tell you one thing that I found recently. When I was there on the tour, the tour guide was telling us that, we couldn't go there because some days you can't get the boat to go because of the currents. And that she had stayed there. It's very primitive. There's no this, there's no that, there's no the other thing. Um, And so I wasn't even thinking that, I really would love to see, there's a woman who does spiritual tours who wants to do it with me, to take a tour of Anwen's travel. We would go to the places in the book, which are all amazingly there. That's the other thing. Oh, it was really quite an interesting experience. Um, but I found out recently through someone who just happened to mention something on
Mhm.
Facebook that I asked her. It's time now because the monks were in a group meeting that she was at with Wiccan priestesses interacting happily on that island the last time she went on retreat there. And I said, oh, this is like the meshing of the currents, because where they were was became a monk's island.
Wow.
So the fact that they were joining in harmonious energy, I said, I think it's time. And then I said, how do you get over there? And she said, there is a day trip. There's like a 4-hour trip, and this guy takes you over and you whatever, and you come back. Right. And I just got that drop in a couple of months ago. So yes is the answer to your question. It's now ready. It's ready.
Yeah, I could like see the mist parting. Yeah.
Well, that island, when I saw it, did have mists on the lowland. There's a hill. So the kind of description of Glastonbury is very the same. You know, the mists of Avalon, the mists on.
That's the image that I have. It's like as you get close to the island, it's like the mist will part. And then once you're through, it goes back because no one, it's like, no one should be seeing it. So maybe it's time. Yeah, it's
I
nice.
think that what they did with the mist wasn't a literal mist. I think they just simply put the veil over. They have reinforced it enormously. There may have been people who held the secret and were reinforcing it until the time was right. Just like, and she says from the other world, they were watching. So it's not like they weren't connected to that, what's happening. And now the story can be told. She said, now the veil is lifting. I'm
Now it's
parting
time.
the veil between the world.
And people are finding your book. That's so cool.
I know that it's going to reach the right hands.
Right.
I have a job to do to make sure of it. But on the other hand, I know that just like I met you and I didn't know you were interested in anything like that. And if it's mentioned, somebody picks it up right away and goes, oh, it's going to have its own life.
That's exactly right. That's cool. Well, thank you so much, Shellie, for all of your beautiful wisdom. And thank you for allowing me to interview you today, or really just listen to all the cool things that you have to say. Our next visit will be book 2, and I just happen to have it here. It's let me get this paper off. Priestesses of the Realm. And that's what the book looks like. Can you see that, Shellie?
I can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Yeah. So our next interview will be after I read this book. I'm sure I'm going to have a million questions to ask. And I hope the readers follow along with me and join you again when we do the second interview. And how can people get a hold of you, Shellie, if they have questions or if they just want to pick your brain or
Okay, my website is my name, Shellie, Shellie, and then my last name, which is spelled Enteen, Enteen, like the end of 17, Enteen. And it's shellieenteen.com. And you can contact me. There's a contact ability. You can actually, there's a book page, so you could see the books there, and the Amazon links are there on that page.
okay.
But if you went to Amazon and you just searched Revealing the Druid Legacy, or even one of the names of the books, it should come up now. It does frequently for people. But it's there in an ebook and a paperback,
Nice.
even a hardcover, which has been once in a while people buy. And I hope one day I'll be able to get an audiobook done also.
Wonderful. Yeah, I just type in your name and your books come up on
Oh,
Amazon. Yeah.
cool.
Yes.
I've become a person.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is. So
Well,
anyway, thank you so much, Liz. I love speaking with you also.
thank you. And this is Soulful Conversations with Modern Day Healers. And Shellie is definitely a modern day healer. Until next time, please know that you are loved and namaste.